There is a quiet assumption most of us carry through life, almost unconsciously, that water is simple, ordinary, replaceable. We think of it as something we drink when we are thirsty, something that accompanies a meal, something we remember only when we feel its absence. But the truth is far more intricate, far more profound. Hydration is not just about quenching thirst. It is about sustaining the very architecture of life within us. If we pause for a moment and consider the human body not as a solid structure, but as a dynamic, flowing system, we begin to see a different picture. Nearly every process that keeps you alive is, at its core, a movement of fluids: your blood, your lymph, the intracellular environment within each of your trillions of cells. These are not static pools, but living currents. And water is the medium through which all of this motion becomes possible. Inside each cell, water acts as both a stage and a participant. Chemical reactions do not occur in empty space. They require a solvent, a context, a fluid environment that allows molecules to meet, interact, and transform. Without sufficient hydration, this microscopic world slows down. Enzymes become less efficient. Nutrients struggle to reach their destinations. Waste products linger longer than they should. It is fascinating to realize that when you drink water, you are not simply filling a container. You are restoring motion to an entire internal universe. Consider the brain, for instance. It is often described as the most complex organ in the human body, but complexity also makes it sensitive. The brain is composed of about 75% water, and even a slight reduction in hydration can begin to alter its function. Not dramatically at first, not in ways that are immediately obvious, but subtly, like a dimming of a light you did not realize was fading. You may notice it as a difficulty in focusing, a sense of mental fog, a slower recall of words or ideas. From a scientific perspective, this is not mysterious. Neurons communicate through electrical signals and chemical messengers, processes that depend heavily on a stable fluid environment. When hydration drops, the balance of electrolytes shifts, and the efficiency of these signals begins to decline. What is remarkable is how easily we overlook this. We often attribute fatigue or lack of concentration to stress, lack of sleep, or even personality traits, when in reality, the body may simply be asking for water. The same principle extends to the cardiovascular system. Blood is not just a carrier of oxygen and nutrients, it is a fluid with specific properties that must be maintained. When you are well hydrated, blood volume is adequate, and circulation flows smoothly. The heart does its work with relative ease, pushing blood through vessels that are appropriately filled. But when dehydration sets in, even mildly, blood volume decreases. The heart must work harder to maintain the same level of circulation. This is not something you consciously feel right away, but it creates a subtle strain on the system. Over time, repeated episodes of inadequate hydration can contribute to inefficiencies that ripple through the entire body. There is also a thermodynamic dimension to hydration that is often underappreciated. The human body is constantly producing heat as a byproduct of metabolism. To maintain a stable internal temperature, this heat must be dissipated, and water plays a central role in that process. Sweating, for example, is not just an inconvenience, it is a finely tuned cooling mechanism. When sweat evaporates from the skin, it carries heat away, preventing the body from overheating. But this system depends entirely on the availability of water. Without sufficient hydration, the body's ability to regulate temperature becomes compromised, and the risk of overheating increases. This becomes particularly important in warm environments or during physical activity, but it is not limited to those situations. Even in everyday life, your body is constantly balancing heat production and heat loss, and water is at the center of that balance. Another layer of this conversation involves the kidneys, organs that operate with quiet precision. Their role is to filter the blood, removing waste products while maintaining the balance of fluids and electrolytes. This process depends heavily on hydration. When you drink enough water, the kidneys can perform their function efficiently, producing urine that carries away toxins and metabolic byproducts. But when water intake is insufficient, the kidneys must conserve fluid. Urine becomes more concentrated, and the elimination of waste becomes less efficient. Over time, this can increase the risk of conditions such as kidney stones, which form when certain substances in the urine become too concentrated and crystallize. It is a vivid example of how something as simple as hydration can influence complex physiological outcomes. There is also an intriguing connection between hydration and digestion. The digestive system is not just a mechanical process, it is a chemical one. From the moment food enters your mouth, it begins a journey that involves enzymes, acids, and a series of carefully orchestrated reactions. Water is essential at every stage. It helps dissolve nutrients, making them accessible for absorption. It supports the movement of food through the gastrointestinal tract, preventing issues such as constipation. It even plays a role in the production of saliva and gastric juices, which are necessary for breaking down food. When hydration is inadequate, digestion can become less efficient. You may not immediately connect a sluggish digestive system to a lack of water, but the relationship is there, quietly influencing how your body processes what you eat. Beyond these physical systems, there is a more subtle, almost philosophical aspect to hydration. Water is not just a component of the body. It is a medium of connection. It links different systems, different processes, different scales of biological organization. Think of it this way. Every cell in your body is separated from the outside world by a membrane, yet it is also connected to that world through the flow of water and dissolved substances. Hydration is what allows this exchange to occur. It is what enables the body to remain both distinct and integrated at the same time. This perspective invites us to reconsider how we think about thirst. Thirst is often treated as a simple signal drink when you feel it. Ignore it when you do not. But by the time you feel thirsty, your body has already begun to experience a degree of dehydration. This is not a flaw in the system. It is simply how the body prioritizes signals. Thirst is a response to a measurable change in fluid balance, not an early warning system. If we rely solely on thirst to guide our hydration, we may consistently fall slightly behind the body's needs. A more attentive approach involves recognizing the subtle cues that precede or accompany thirst dryness in the mouth. A slight dip in energy, a change in mood, a reduced clarity of thought. These are not dramatic symptoms, but they are meaningful. There is also a behavioral dimension to hydration that is worth exploring. In modern life, many of us structure our days around tasks, deadlines, and routines that do not naturally include regular water intake. We may drink coffee in the morning, perhaps a beverage with a meal, and then realize late in the day that we have had very little water. Caffeinated drinks, while enjoyable and stimulating, can have mild diuretic effects, increasing fluid loss. This does not mean they are harmful, but it does mean they should not be relied upon as primary sources of hydration. What is interesting is how small changes in behavior can have significant effects. Keeping water within reach, taking a moment to drink between tasks, paying attention to the color of your urine as a rough indicator of hydration. These are simple practices, yet they align your daily habits with the body's physiological needs. Hydration also intersects with physical performance in ways that are both immediate and cumulative. Muscles are composed largely of water, and their function depends on proper hydration. Even mild dehydration can lead to a decrease in strength, endurance, and coordination. This is not just relevant for athletes. Everyday activities, walking, lifting, maintaining posture are all influenced by muscle function. When hydration is optimal, these activities feel easier, more fluid. When it is not, there is a subtle increase in effort, a quiet resistance that you may not consciously notice, but that affects your overall experience of movement. There is also a connection between hydration and joint health. Synovial fluid, which lubricates the joints, relies on adequate hydration to maintain its properties. When hydration is insufficient, this lubrication can be compromised, potentially contributing to stiffness and discomfort. Again, these are not dramatic effects that appear overnight. They are gradual, cumulative, and often overlooked. But over time, they shape how the body feels and functions. Another area that invites reflection is the relationship between hydration and skin. The skin is often seen as a cosmetic concern, but it is also a physiological organ with important functions. It acts as a barrier, regulates temperature, and participates in sensory perception. Hydration influences the skin's elasticity and appearance, but more importantly, it supports its role as a protective interface. Well-hydrated skin is more resilient, better able to perform its functions effectively. Yet, it is important to avoid oversimplification. Drinking water alone is not a cure-all for skin issues, as many factors are involved, including nutrition, genetics, and environmental exposure. But hydration is a foundational element, one that supports the skin's overall health. As we continue to explore this topic, it becomes clear that hydration is not a single variable, but a network of relationships. It interacts with nutrition, activity, environment, and even emotional state. Stress, for example, can influence hydration indirectly. When you are stressed, you may become less attentive to your body's needs, including the need to drink water. Additionally, stress can affect hormonal balance, which in turn can influence fluid regulation. Sleep is another factor. During sleep, the body continues to lose water through respiration and perspiration. Starting the day with a glass of water can help restore this balance, supporting the transition from rest to activity. There is a certain elegance in recognizing that something as simple as water can have such a wide-ranging impact. It challenges the tendency to look for complex solutions to health issues while overlooking the foundational elements that support the body's natural processes. In a way, hydration invites a shift in perspective from treating the body as a machine that requires occasional maintenance to understanding it as a living system that requires continuous support. When you drink water, you are participating in a process that is both immediate and ongoing. You are not just addressing a momentary need. You are contributing to the stability and efficiency of countless processes that unfold within you. It is also worth considering the quality of attention we bring to this act. Drinking water can be automatic, almost unconscious, or it can be intentional, a moment of awareness, a recognition of the body's needs and your role in meeting them. This does not require complexity or effort. It simply involves a shift in how we perceive something we already do. If we return to the initial assumption that water is simple, ordinary, replaceable, we can now see how incomplete that view is. Water is simple in its composition, but profound in its function. It is ordinary in its availability, but extraordinary in its impact. Hydration is not a peripheral concern. It is central to the experience of being alive. It influences how you think, how you feel, how you move, how you respond to the world around you. And perhaps the most compelling aspect of this is how accessible it is. Unlike many aspects of health that require specialized knowledge, resources, or interventions, hydration is within reach. It is a daily choice, a habit, a quiet form of self-care that accumulates over time. In recognizing its importance, we are not adding complexity to our lives. We are refining our awareness of something fundamental. So the next time you reach for a glass of water, it may be worth pausing, even briefly, to consider what that act represents. Not just the relief of thirst, but the restoration of balance, the support of countless invisible processes, the continuation of a delicate and intricate system that depends, in so many ways, on something so seemingly simple. And in that moment, hydration is no longer an afterthought. It becomes a conscious engagement with the biology of your own existence, a reminder that even the most basic elements of life carry a depth that is easy to overlook, but profoundly important to understand.